Living under oppressive rule where the lower class has unfair taxation and abysmal living conditions, the French Revolution, the Russian Revolution, and the Chinese Revolution show how unfair treatment between citizens in a community caused an uproar in the lower class, pushing for a more equal society. The French Revolution, the Russian Revolution, and the Chinese Revolution would have taught the British how unfair taxation on classes, weak rule, and bad living conditions would cause the American Revolution. The British would have learned from the French that by creating unequal powers in government and giving lower classes an unequal lifestyle, that lower classes will revolt in order to create a more equal society. In France, Louis XVI enabled the brutality of the estate system to separate classes based off wealth. The inherent inequity of this system gave unequal power to the upper classes. The unfair nature of the estates was easily shown by how each estate was taxed. The first and second estate had to pay a negligible amount of tax in comparison to the third estate. And before the uprising of the third estate with the storming of the Bastille and the overthrowing of Louis XVI in protest of monarchy, the third estate was subjected to the monarchy's rule. Like the French, America was under an oppressive rule. America was under the oppressive rule of the British. Britain wanted to tax the Americans and placed taxes like the Sugar Act of 1764 and the Tea Act of 1773 on American trade. Though Britain had relatively loose control over America because of its distance, the British used its power to create unequal opportunity for American citizens relative to British citizens. The Americans didn't have a say in taxes that were placed on them, and they wanted representation from the colonies before Britain taxed the American trade. A slogan was created to rally the American struggle: no taxation without representation. Like the French, the British created unfair taxation that caused for the rallying of American citizens. The French monarchy used its power to prey on the weak by creating unfair taxes on the lower classes. Britain would have learned from France that by creating unfair taxes on the economic class, it would cause dismay amongst the people.
American government could have learned from the Russians that their bad living conditions would only want to make people revolt. Tsar Nicholas created terrible working conditions, child labor, and low wages. The Russian resented his autocracy. People's health and safety were dismal. There was also a lack of land for the peasants, so they moved into the cities, which quickly became overpopulated, and the living conditions worsened. In the American Revolution, King George III lost a lot of money, so he imposed taxes on the colonies, which outraged them. The Quartering Act was where people had to house soldiers, which is what enraged them the most, because they were scared of the soldiers in their homes since the Boston Massacre. If the British could have made a compromise and been given better working and living conditions, they could have avoided a revolution.
In the Chinese Revolution, the people all bonded together to fight for democracy. If the American Revolution had happened before the Chinese Revolution, the Americans should have learned that when they came together to fight for the government, they fought as one. In Tiananmen Square, Beijing, Chinese students all came together to fight for freedom. When they assembled together, their ruler Deng Xiaoping feared their power as a one and called martial law. Many left, but the ones that stayed risked their lives to make a change for their country. In the American Revolution, there were two parties, the Loyalists and the Patriots. The Loyalists were a group of Americans that sided with how the British ruled their government. They were against revolting the British. The Patriots were another group of Americans that wanted freedom from the British. The Patriots did end up uniting with each other when they declared independence from the British in 1776. If the Americans had bonded together from the start and worked together, they could have accomplished what they wanted sooner and with less bloodshed. In conclusion, if the American Revolution could have learned anything from the other revolutions, it should be that forcing people to live in a bad condition will make them revolt. Being in a revolution will help their chances to succeed, and that governments should not force people to live in bad conditions. This shows that the government needs to let people speak and have a voice instead of oppressing them and just looking for the benefit of the 1%.